I'm Jake. This is Matt. I'm going to let Matt introduce himself real quick because he's going to do almost as much talking as I am, if not more. So Matt, do you want to take it away for a second?
Yeah, I'm Matt Scher. I do sales and product development for InSoFast. We started developing this products to basically expand our market into other types of insulation. This is our X bracket system by InSoFast. What it does is it eliminates thermal bridging and creates a continuous insulation system with spray foam or blown-in insulation. We also have InSoFast panels that we'll be showing you in a little bit here too. So just going over our mock-up here, we have a blown-in insulation. This is a mineral wool product, but it can be used with any type of blown-in insulation that you'd normally use. This is just a vapor permeable, vapor retarder house wrap that allows there to be a heavy drying potential in conjunction with the ventilated rain screen that will run the height of the wall. And it will be able to move a lot of air because we have 1.5 inches of airspace there to allow easy drying, especially with that blown-in insulation. So,
yeah.
And then on this side, we have our spray foam mock-up. This also has the ventilated rain screen, but one thing that you also see here is we have cross ventilation, which will allow bidirectional air movement. And on top of that, if you opt to bring the insulation up over top of the roof, that ventilated rain screen continues to the peak of your roof where you just use a standard ridge vent.
Which you're also getting that 3D matrix here as well. And
Yep.
you're, at least in this display, you could end up filling and stopping that ventilation and just venting here, right?
Yep, you could. But
So what we're seeing is, exterior insulation is part of the code in 18 in some markets and 21 in most markets. I realize we're in climate zone 2, and that's not the case. But in the rest of the United States, 3 and up, or 4 and up, right? 3 and up? 4 and up. In 4 and up, it's pretty much required or strongly suggested, let's say that. And there's other products on the market, but those products are like, you're getting R6 or R9. And it's, okay, you're meeting code minimums maybe, but R10 is the code minimum for my market. Well, that's not R9, that's R10. So the second you start going beyond that, you're either putting big sheets of stuff in the form of a foam or a bat or a compressible material, most likely. Even sheet foams like polyiso compress when you put a screw through them. Even if they're applied to something else first, they compress when you put a screw or a nail through it. Here you have structural framing members, and it's important to note that
Yep.
this is the production version of this.
Yep, that's the
It's the
version that's going
updated
to be
version.
released
How
in
about that?
December.
So these guys are the original version that they're running right now, the ones that are on the ground of the X bracket. X bracket's the correct term, right, Matt?
Yep, that's correct.
X bracket, and they've updated it. And we may as well note real quick, the update is just a wider nailing surface. And it is nailing, it's not necessarily a nail or a screw. You don't have to
Yep.
screw it in. So framer, not trim carpenter.
Yep.
This allows you to go well beyond just an R6 or an R9. And now your framers can run these guys and then run these guys and then walk away.
Yep.
And now you don't have to wait for the insulators to get there to do something else. I see it as the second you're any bit above code minimum, you have a faster solution, you have a simpler solution. It doesn't solve every problem. If you were going to do cedar shakes, this isn't a solution sort of thing. But no product solves every problem, right?
Yeah.
This blown in, the idea that I can have a structural sheathing in the middle of the wall and be completely vapor open with a blown in insulation, and then a house wrap that is just there really to shed water, and that's it. That's super simple if I have drying potentials in both directions on a wall that has 6-8 inches of insulation total. or 10 inches of insulation and half of it's continuous on the outside, that gets me beyond my worries of condensation in the wall, even in a climate zone 5 or 6 real quick, without having to worry about putting extra or super, or more costly insulation. Or if I'm in climate zone 7 or 8, I can start looking at, well, I can get R13 or 14 real quick on the outside.
Yep.
And then still do the same thing on the other side with something that's hefty.
Yeah, with these brackets, you can get up to R28 spray foam in there and still maintain ventilation. Another thing is this makes it really easy to get to Joe Stebrick's perfect wall.
Yeah.
With all the insulation on the outside, no chance of condensation whatsoever. Or you could throw bats in there just as easy and you're still so protected from that condensation by the amount of insulation that you have on the outside.
So structurally, how far between brackets do I have to, or can I go if I'm doing 2x4s as my stringers between them?
So on the outside, we can go up to 48 inches on center. So that just helps to limit the amount of material you need for the wall. Limits the time you need to install. One other thing to note is you're installing these brackets on a framed wall with just common framing nails. You don't need any fancy screws or structural screws, or you're just shooting them up. They go up really quickly with the nail gun. So.
And if you're nailing siding directly to this, layout is probably not even that important as long as you're hitting stud with this. Because once this goes on, your manufacturer of your siding is only worried about stud spacing, and you already hit studs with this. So then it's still like, I hate to say it, it's blow and go work at that point for your siding guys, right? Now you said on the outside I can go 48 inches. We'll look at the mock-up in a minute, but that means on the inside. So what is the inside consideration here?
So on the inside you can space the brackets up to, in a vertical spacing, up to 7 feet on center. And that's with framing spacing anywhere from 24 to 16 on center.
So there is another mock-up over here, and what Matt's alluding to is we could do a double stud wall on the inside, but not build a double stud wall. So we can go a couple brackets on the interior side, and now we've doubled the thickness of a 2x4 wall without having to do total plates and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you can do up to a 9-foot high wall with just 2 rows of brackets down each stud. So. One other thing I'd like to mention is the potential for energy retrofits. There is a huge market for energy retrofits, and usually these houses are very leaky, they're just not airtight, they're not watertight, and if you want to retrofit with the spray foam, we can actually, even if it has old wood lap siding on it, you don't even need to tear that stuff off. You don't need to pay a lead disposal fee, and you can go right over top of that with a impermeable to water and vapor coating that will prevent any damage from those things. Also, when you're talking about the spray foam on the outside, we're in Texas where we get hurricanes occasionally, tornadoes occasionally. So if you have this coating of foam on the outside, you have a backup weather-proof barrier that will not allow water to go through it. So if your siding or your shingles rip off in a storm, you still have protection. You're not immediately getting water damage. So. And
there's certainly added benefit to structure at that point as well.
Yep.
In that retrofit idea, I could certainly see historic home where you don't want to touch millwork and plaster work and things like that. Popping these on the outside of the building, adding spray foam, extending jambs, and then adding new windows on the outside, putting clapboard back on, making it look like you didn't do anything, that the building just gets fatter, and then treating it like, well, we have new storm windows on the outside, even though they're like brand new windows. and then the interiors just be interior storms, and you could leave the old windows and everything on the inside. And it's like you didn't touch anything. The clients weren't disturbed. All they dealt with was people trampling through their plants on the outside. And all that happened was they got an R25 bonus on the whole building on the outside.
And the other thing that you can do with the retrofit, or well, that you wouldn't necessarily have to do with the retrofits, is update your electrical. If you open up the walls, in most places, you're automatically going to have to update the electrical, which that may be a good idea in general, but it's not required. So if you're doing energy retrofits on a budget, talking federal housing programs that are being about cost effectiveness, you don't have to do that extra step if you're not wanting to do that.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Do you want to look at the double stud wall?
Sure. So what you'll see here is we have the brackets attached directly to the studs, and then we have our smart vapor retarder here, and then we have the 2x4 furring strips. So some of the cool things about this is these smart vapor retarders are obviously not cheap, and it's important to keep those intact, especially when you have a lot of blown-in insulation, because there is that elevated risk of condensation.
Yeah.
So you don't actually have to, when you run your electrical, put holes through your vapor retarder. You can mount an 1.5 inch deep box to the side of these furring strips and pull your wires down from the ceiling, and your vapor retarder remains intact.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I could see this as a retrofit too. You guys aren't showing it that way. This could be the same sort of retrofit as out there. We're not touching siding, but we're adding insulation sort of thing.
Yeah.
Rather than just coming in and nailing up polyiso board or something like that, and then having to anchor new drywall with super long screws and do box extensions and everything. Just pulling into new boxes, adding these guys rather than reframing the whole house. Less lumber through the building, less lumber having to carry into the site or up flights of stairs. And these guys, even just from an aspect of I'm paying for lighter weight stuff and carrying it in, not just the like I'm reducing thermal bridging and that kind of stuff. And even not on a vapor front, just you can detail this as an air control membrane as well, and it works as a vapor as a secondary issue. For most people, air control is just as important.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, and another application that you could use this in that's not exactly like this here, but if you turn this into a roof, you can fit more blown-in insulation in your cavity between your roof rafters. So if you're needing to get more insulation in your what's it called, a vaulted ceiling,
A cathedral ceiling or something.
Yeah, this is an option to do that.
Yeah, and actually, you asked a good question about the rafter tails hanging out over there. They wouldn't necessarily have to, but this assembly shows a traditional frame where you could add it after the fact, and they've just bumped it up. Those trusses, it's important to note on the trusses that they're showing, that was a planned assembly. So all they did was...
Do we want to go over there and
yeah, we can peek at it one more time, actually. We kind of moved past it.
They do talk about continuous.
The important thing that they did was they ordered this truss with this 2x6 kicker plated to the top side of it.
Yep.
That gives them the height of the bracket plus the 2x4 on top of it.
Yep.
So it's a built-in system where all they did was add this to the truss, which is super cheap to do, and it gets them a rafter tail that's the same height as that. It's cheaper than trying to fly off the bracket down and out like Matt did with the Monopoly frame house. This is way less work than trying to do the Monopoly frame detail that Matt's shown if you're trying to use this system. Yeah. So I would rather see it like this with this little kicker on. Like this is like $2 a truss or something per end from the truss plant. They don't care about doing little stuff like that. I would rather see this than all this be cut flat and then try to do it with flying that way, especially because when it's on the flat, you're not getting any resistance out of that. It would be kind of a pain because you'd have to prop back and then you're mounting back to these guys at some point. It'd be a challenge. I'd rather run traditional trusses like that with a kicker. So
Yeah, all trusses are custom, so
yeah,
it doesn't make any sense not to do a custom truss.
yeah. And the MyTech software would count this as a zero load. They wouldn't even calculate it into, it doesn't change any of the rest of the structure of the truss. So it doesn't
Yep.
cost you anything. So
Yeah,
want to look at InSoFast
yeah.
or the panels? Trey, besides, you're taller
Yeah.
than me. Yeah, that's right. Have you guys seen this before? Because this product's been around for a little while. The
Yeah.
stuff we were just looking at is brand new.
Yeah, this came out in 2006.
Yeah.
So these are our InSoFast panels. You'll see 4 of them here. This is a 2-inch R8.5, 2.5-inch R10.5, 3 3/4 R15.9, and this one, if you want to zoom in at the top here, it's actually corrugated. These are for shipping containers. It fits to the corrugations of the shipping container to get the most out of your insulation and prevent air gaps behind your insulation. So some of the features you'll see here are there's rain screen on the front of most of our panels and the back of all of our panels. So these can be used on the interior or the exterior of the home. If you're using it on the exterior, you have a double rain screen. So if water gets through your siding, it's going through the front rain screen. If water leaks through your window flashings, it's going through the back rain screen. So you don't have any place in the wall that's going to hold water in tension. You'll see that.
Hold on, Matt. It's important to note because the first thing that people say is like, well, there's a gap there. That's not insulation, right? Correct. But water is worse than the R value hit that you take by having that gap. So we're way more worried about water held in tension suction between two pieces than we are the little bitty R value hit that we take from that. Okay.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned that, when you install these panels on the outside, you want to put a bead of sealant at the top of the wall, and that will create a hot air balloon effect to prevent a convective loop in that back rain screen. That's one of the questions we get sometimes. So moving on to the built-in studs, you'll see it really clearly on the 2-inch panel because it's exposed. But all of our panels have these studs built into them. They will, if you're using it on the exterior, take the place of your furring strips, so you don't need to install any furring strips. Or if you're using it on the interior, it's taking the place of furring studs. So you can see that this can take a lot of fasteners very well. You're not going to split these studs easily.
And this is effectively the same polymer as here. It's not exact.
It's similar.
Yeah.
So one of the other things you'll see about this stud is the grooves on the back of the stud, these dovetail grooves. One of the secrets about our product is the adhesive that we use to attach it to the concrete wall, because we can attach these to a concrete wall with adhesive, doesn't actually stick to this material. But we've got around that by creating this dovetail surface where when the glue hardens, it becomes a mechanical bond. We're not relying at all on adhesion. So this will hold nearly 1,000 pounds per foot of InSoFast stud. So
You get the sense that everybody that's in charge of this company is just an engineer and they happen to sell stuff. like,
yeah. So one thing that I haven't touched on about these panels is there's built-in electrical raceways in the back of these panels. So on our Max panel, it's actually inside the panel. There's one here and one here. So if you are installing electrical outlets, you can pull wires through the walls. You don't need to get out the hot knife
or a ball.
or a chainsaw
Yeah.
or whatever people use. So
If you've ever had to do the hot steel ball that then you drop in a SIPS panel and let it soak down through the wall, you understand the importance of just the fact that there's a core formed hole there already.
Yeah. One of the other features of these panels is it's tongue and groove, so it locks together tightly, seals very well against air. So
I would also note that having worked with tongue and groove EPS before, their TNG is slightly deeper than some of the other manufacturers. So even if your floor or your walls aren't perfectly level and it doesn't perfectly TNG together, it still TNGs together better than most other manufacturers. It's small, but it makes a difference when you're trying to make sure that it's not going to be a problem.
yeah, and now that you mentioned floors, I'll just leave that there. This is the panel we sell most often for floors. We actually put it down on the floor. Usually it's going to be a free-floating application where you don't use adhesive or screws or anything to hold it down. The reason for that is it gives your floor a more comfortable feel. There's a little bit of give to it, which especially if you're older or have bad joints, it can be painful to stand on a concrete surface all day. So
that's why you're standing on a mat right now.
Exactly. So this will give a little bit of give to the floor when it's free floating. And then you just do a double staggered seam with subflooring over top of it. You don't need to do a double layer of subflooring like you do with a lot of foam boards because you can attach it to the studs. So
you actually have anchoring points built into it. So if you followed did anybody do the home tour yesterday? Okay. So the 2 layers of insulation, 2 layers of subfloor, you get 1 layer of subfloor because you're fastening the 2 layers of foam together.
Yeah.
So you're paying $7,000 less in subfloor at Matt's house by paying a little bit more for insulation. 7,000 is a ballpark, but I think I'm close.
Yeah. So the only time where we require it to be glued down is if you're doing a tile floor. So that's the only time where we require it to be glued down. So
okay.
Yeah.
What have we missed?
So here are some pictures of a retrofit that we did on a early 1900s building with the spray foam. You just nail the brackets over the old siding and then spray in with spray foam. And it was a very simple retrofit. Just had to put the brackets up, put the fern strips up, spray it, side it. Yeah. So a lot fewer steps than a lot of other products on the market.
Matt's going to like this. I'm going to point out a mistake. This is the test house that they built. They figured out after the test house, put the 2x4s on before you spray foam.
Yes.
They had to clean all the brackets off because they just had a little bit of overspray on them. But that's why you do the test house, because you figure it out. Right?
Yeah. We found that it's much easier to do it this way with the 2x4s on before you spray it than the alternative. That also, if you get a little thick on the foam, you don't have to trim it. And
because you can bleed up the side of the 2x4 a little. As long as you're not wrapping around the face, then you're fine.
Yeah, and even if only 25% of the furring strip has a gap behind it, you still have enough cross ventilation to benefit the house.
So talk to us about cost. If we're using brackets in the the 2x6 size.
Yeah. So the cost will end up being, if you're using it on the exterior 4 feet on center, around $1 a square foot of wall area. If you're doing it inside 7 foot on center, you're looking more at 70 cents a square foot.
$1 a square foot to get an extra 2x6 worth of, you're still paying for insulation, right? But I can't put sheet foam on the outside for $1 a square foot and then pay for 6-inch or 7-inch fasteners. Even if that was the same cost as a 7-inch screw, I'm going to get a better result with spray foam, close-cell spray foam, than I am going to get double layers of sheet foam if I'm trying for something like that. Now, there are other great insulations that will work just fine. And if I'm blowing it in place, I'm not going to be able to do that with long screws and other, like, this is the only way that I'm blowing exterior probably.
Yeah. One of the other things I'd like to mention is all our products are pre-engineered. We have a blanket code report for every state in the United States, and we're even getting the code report done in Canada that you can just submit to your building department, and you can forego any job-specific engineering that you would with like Larson trusses, for example, or just about anything that you're putting on the roof. So.
Okay. You guys have questions?
So in an exterior application like that, what's the detail of the bottoms?
What's that?
Like in an exterior application like this, what's
What would
the
be our
detail
bottom
of the
detail?
bottom
Yeah.
for a blow-in, like
Yeah. So it's a very simple detail. We don't have a mock-up here. Didn't get that one along, but we're basically just using a 1x4 or 2x4 to retain the insulation, and then we're building a vented soffit, just the same one that you do underneath your roof eaves at the bottom of the wall. So it's nothing new, it's just in a new place.
Yeah.
any specification, like how far above grade?
So I'd stick with the same exposure that I'd be happy putting my siding down there. I'd be that 6 to 8 inches. And if I were going down close to grade, I might just do stainless steel screening and be done with it, rather than do soffit. Now, if I was, raised ranch, split level is what we call it in Missouri. Everybody else calls it a raised ranch, I think. And I had that, then I'd be back up to a soffit detail of some sort. But I might look at just doing stainless steel, which is pricey, but it's a forever then, stainless steel screen and be done with it too.
Yeah, and one of the other things at the bottom of the wall is you can easily overlap it over the foundation, or if you have your foundation walls coming up, let's say a foot or two out of the wall, these brackets have the same glue strip that the panels do, that will allow you to attach these with construction adhesive. So you don't have to use concrete screws or nails. So.
And at the base of the wall, you're only carrying the bottom of that 2x4. It's not like that thing's carrying the whole wall.
Yeah. So.
I have two questions.
Yeah.
You started about engineering, and so like I'm in California, I'm in seismic services.
Yep.
What I could see is I'm kind of wondering about, okay, I'm now, let's say I'm doing that wall assembly, but with cultured stone outside of it. I can see my engineer saying, well, hang on, now I've got this like stone wall that's like floating off of my structural wall.
Yeah.
Is there stuff in there? I didn't know what they would need for that. Is there stuff in the structural reporting for that? Is there consideration for that?
Unfortunately, our code report does not touch on seismic, so you would have to get an engineer involved in that specific case. But we do have blanket engineering values that you can plug in.
Right, you can probably figure it out.
Yep.
I'm sure if not, he can get in touch with you guys. He can figure it out. The other one's actually acoustics. I was thinking of a double stud wall. Like I have a client right now. They're doing their home theater, and we're talking about acoustic. And so like a double stud wall is a great acoustic break.
Yep.
This would obviously be connected a little more like a C-channel type assembly.
Yep.
Do you guys have any like STC rating, any sort of like acoustic assembly rating?
We have not done STC rating for that, but you're talking about a very small area of your
Connection
wall
point.
that it's probably going to be in the negligible range.
I would assume you could also isolate between the two.
Yeah, if you put a rubber
You
washer behind it or something.
Yeah, or use a mass-loaded vinyl. There's a piece of mass-loaded vinyl behind it.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
What else?
Quick question. I came late, so maybe you guys already went over this. Is there a reason why for the 2x4 strips as opposed to your typical 1x4 strips?
Rigidity.
Yeah,
for starters.
For rigidity, and when we're
nail
talking
base.
blown in, if you look at this mock-up, you'll see that when you blow in behind a flexible membrane, it pillows out. So it gives you a little bit more room to pillow. That's for blown in for starts. In general, we prefer the 2x4s because they're more rigid. We have tried it with 1x4s and they were too bouncy. And when it comes down to it, 2x4s are usually the same price or cheaper than 1x4s. So,
You have them there anyway when you're ready.
yeah.
What do you think?
Very interesting. It's compelling. Especially when you just you listen to Steve, right? And he's like, oh, this is, double wall and all this extra insulation. I'm like, yeah, but I could do this. And much cheaper. You said it's around $1 per square foot. Which is like a buck.
If you do it in
To
the
do
double
that.
wall, it's going to be closer to 70 cents a square foot.
So we're entire inside here. So it's shown as an interior here. On the outside, we're $1 a square foot probably.
Yep.
And that's because we're using less of them inside.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing here with this double wall is you're beyond this 2x4, the thermal bridging, or this 2x6 in this example. Beyond that, you're not getting any additional thermal bridging. So that will give you an additional R4-ish in your overall R value performance because you don't have that second layer of thermal bridging.
Yeah.
So,
It's not often that something comes to the market that's just like, I never would have, I absolutely would not have thought to do it in a simple way like that. And I've seen plenty of pictures of people being like, okay, on the outside of the house, we're gonna stack EPS and put a big long fastener through it and a 2x4 and then spray foam and do exactly that with a homemade system. And I've seen it done multiple times. And it's like, why wouldn't we just do it out of
yeah, a pre-engineered system
Yeah.
that you don't have to get an engineer involved. You're
Yeah.
probably gonna be spending more on that than you would on our brackets.
yeah, those guys cutting EPS blocks and screwing them together or gluing them together to
Yeah.
nail them on the wall. And
Is this for electrical line running?
Yes. So those are electrical clips. So if you're running your electrical wires through the wall, say if you're using these on a basement, that's another application for these. They can be glued to the concrete wall, and you can just clip your wires in wherever you're required to secure the wire. What you can do is just zip a zip tie on it to secure it. So,
we didn't talk about basements, so no framing in the basement except for this layer of stud and top and bottom plate. You're omitting here and you're mounting directly to the concrete wall potentially.
yeah. And that proprietary glue strip allows us to do that very effectively.
Yeah, especially if you're if you're spray foaming down there, there's no reason to frame all the other stuff. All you're creating is a nail base then at that point for gypsum or whatever you're putting down there.
Yeah.
And now you're not pushing anything up against the concrete wall. You could stop at your last one. You could add another one down here and go treated at the bottom 2 feet or something if you wanted, and treated base.
Yeah, and you're not embedding wood into your vapor barrier.
Yeah.
So,
This is patented, right?
yes, it is. Don't get any funny ideas.
Yeah.
Well, now.
Is there a different pattern, like if you want for an exterior application, where you're running a vertical horizontal?
Yeah, so you can actually orient the brackets so you can run vertical or horizontal burring strips, whatever's more convenient with your siding.
I noticed with the next one, they're round, so it should be attaching that way, so they're going.
Yeah, yeah, they're always going to be attached like this.
You can do diagonal strips.
Yeah, you could if you wanted to do that, you could do that as well. But,
So you said in a basement, you're talking about a basement wall application? Or
Yeah.
A basement?
Yep.
Okay. Now, if I wanted to do a floor, could I use this or am I going to my...
so we actually Did get these rated for compression, and that number came back over 1,000 pounds of allowable load. So we do anticipate being able to use these in a floor system where you set these down, you glue these down, run your 2x4s across the brackets, put your spray foam in, and then put subfloor down. When we start talking about super insulated floor assemblies, like Matt Reisinger has some very expensive solutions that are very effective, but this is another solution that's probably not going to be quite as expensive. I think he said he spent almost $10 a square foot on his floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if I wanted to remove, a concrete slab, if I just want to go slabless, right, I could do that.
You have to have an anchoring point.
Yeah.
You got to have some structure to attach that to.
Yeah.
That'd be the challenge.
Yeah, so we have had people use our InSoFast panels in that manner where they screed a layer of pea gravel over the floor, and then put their vapor barrier down and then lay the panels down in a floating manner. So.
But I guess if I have a client who has a dropped living room that they're trying to raise up and level out with the whole rest of the house, they're on a slab, I could drop those down and float a floor instead of having to actually put stringers down everywhere and actually build that up. Maybe way less lumber.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
nothing treated potentially then.
Right.
Not bringing any of that in the house.
So you said that load reporting is not out yet.
It is going to be in our code report. So,
I have that issue right now, so that could be good.
so yeah. Did I touch on sizes?
No, not yet.
So, we are releasing the 2.5 inch bracket and the 3 3/4 inch bracket in December. And then these other three sizes up to 12 inches will be released in this coming spring. So, the shorter brackets are going to be more for your spray foam applications. The taller ones are going to be more for your blown-in applications.
Yeah.
The other thing that we didn't touch on is the potential for doing a flash and blow situation on the exterior.
Sure.
So you're putting the brackets on, and then you're spraying probably 2 inches of spray foam, give or take, depending on what you're looking for. So that's going to give you an incredible air seal. And then you can blow your insulation in to get your super high R values if you're doing a net zero or passive house in a relatively cost-effective manner.
When we're talking flash and blow, we always talk about like what's the most that you can do in one pass, because there's heat requirements where you got to let things flash off. It depends on manufacturer, depends on install temperatures and things like that on a day of install, site temperatures, but most of the time it's 2 inches or 2.5 inches, something like that. So that 2 to 2.5 is a good, like, let's do that and not come back and make a second pass, because that's where the cost starts to be incurred.
Yep.
And then it's also important that, like, I think most people would say not flash and bat, flash and blow, because when you bat, it doesn't actually conform to all the spray foam texture.
For sure.
Flash and bat was really popular for a short period of time, and I think some people are still hanging on to it and they don't understand all you're doing is making cavities behind there. I had a conversation with one of the engineers at a major fiberglass manufacturer, and he said, if I can put my thumb in without touching something, I've compromised a 12-inch radius around that to the tune of like 60%. So flash and bat does not work at all. So flash and blown is the important keywords there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that and bats don't work very well with these brackets either.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, where can they sag to?
Sorry. Is 6 inch the most popular?
So this one is 4 1/4.
What is your most popular?
This is the only one that we have for sale at the moment. Our production molds for these sizes will be here in December. So we foresee probably the 2 inch or 3 3/4 inch to be most popular for spray foam. Probably that 2 inch, because that's R15. That'll meet your basement code in any part of the country. And then for blown in, people generally want to do a lot of blown in when they do blown in. So we're probably going to sell the bigger brackets for that.
Yeah.
How do you guys distribute?
We ship direct to your site. Yep.
I like that.
Either through FedEx or LTL freight.
Wow. I can't argue with that.
So
What else?
Yeah, I'm just debating things in my head, but I think it's more of a systems question than it is like an InSoFast specific. Like, I have a project I was prepping to be like a Zip R9.
Yep.
Right? You gotta fight with those big old fasteners and my gun exploding all the time.
yeah.
Right? But then I'm looking at this like, oh, should I change tacks? Because this is slick, right?
Yeah.
I don't know my question. I'm just debating those two. I'm like, what do I need to be thin? Because I'm comparing those two. Those are both good options,
Yep.
right? I don't know. I'm just trying to think about how to think about that problem as I've never worked with this. We've got this system over here that we know is good, right? But this makes a crap ton of sense. So I don't know. Any help debating that?
I mean, I've nailed on Zip R, and it's a pain to nail that on. These nail on easy. Sure, you have another couple steps in there, but I'll say either is a good option, but you're going to be able to get more performance out of this system by far. One of the other things that they don't mention about Zip R is you're putting hundreds of fasteners, especially when you get to the Zip R9, Zip R12, you're putting 2-3 inches on center, and that's a lot of metal going through your insulation.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of degradation there, whereas this system, the thermal bridging through these brackets is almost nothing. It's wiped out by the 2x4 that you put in front of it. So you're getting your actual R value in terms of performance.
Learning curve, obviously, the first time you use it,
Yeah.
But it is. I mean,
but probably only the first time.
detailing at the edges. I mean, taking the steepest learning, shooting that on, it's okay. But you're sure.
Yeah. Also, on the outside, if you're pushing WRB out, you don't have to pay for expensive panel.
Right.
You can pay for whatever the cheapest panel you can get your hand on that carries the structural rating you need,
Right.
and then you can buy a decent, roll WRB
Yep.
and be done with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That does make sense. It
there's
makes a lot of sense.
that it's not just that it's $1 a square foot for the pieces. Now you're reducing panel costs if you were going to be comparing it to a different panel.
Right.
Now you're buying $7 or $8, $11 OSB.
Right. There's a big difference.
Yeah. So, and if you're strapping with 2x4s, now your rain screen is really hefty and durable. You got really good drying potential. Whereas before, I'm guessing you weren't doing an 1.5-inch WRB or an 1.5-inch rain screen.
No, more than half of
Yeah.
it, whether it's a zip system or a delta, or
Yeah.
like delta system like that.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we saw constantly when we took a trip to Norway this year. Was like, yeah, part of the reason their walls dry is because their their rain screen's enormous. Yeah, there's so much air moving through there. Nothing stays wet when you bump it up just because you need the 2x4s for your structure, your nail base. There you go.
So the rain screens are actually their drainage planes are thicker.
Yeah.
As opposed to like a delta is like a 1/4 inch.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And one of the other things that can benefit the system is the use of high quality membranes, like this Siga Myrex, for example, on the inside, or Siga MyVest on the outside.
Yeah.
Their perm rating is, when it's wet, it's close to 50. When it's dry, it's not much.
Yeah.
So, very good products to use, especially with blown in.
Yeah.
Cool system.
I'm here for another 15 minutes if anybody wants to chat about it too. I'm here to talk about it. Not if you worked for me though. Somebody behind you is raising their hands. We can talk about it.
When do we get to use it?
Okay.